Hey, how'd your prior session go?
They've been going really well.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we actually ended up in the prior one with the credentials and the micro credentials. We had our Michigan reps for Midwest Lab or Lab Midwest or whatever it
Mhm.
was. And so that was really interesting. It gave us a lot of great insight on the SACA credentials and how their curriculum kind of works with that and aligns with that, and some of the other credentials they align with, and how. And,
Okay.
of course, Patrick was on from Macomb, and he does a lot of work with that. So that was interesting to hear how they're using it, and how Oakland is using it as well. And uh, yeah, it was
Oh,
good.
good.
It was
Okay.
pretty fascinating. So I do more of incumbent worker training rather than the academies or the potential worker training. And
Mhm.
so I've been trying to figure out how to do like credentials, take advantage of that credentialing funding for incumbent worker. And then how does it actually translate into maybe a financial benefit for the worker, and not just a knowledge benefit and a skill benefit for the employer? So, yeah, it was good.
Yeah, we're looking at that SOCA credentialing too. We're trying to figure all of that out. It's a little bit of the wild. I mean, I wish I could have joined your session. I was out all last week, so my week got totally screwed up this week, and so trying to get everything sorted out. So I apologize for missing, but I'm just trying to figure out kind of the wild, wild west of credentialing and micro credentialing. They're just like whatever you want, you can do it. Hey, Patrick.
Yeah, I'm just echoing and agreeing. It is like the Wild Wild West.
and, and so we're trying to like figure it out and define it, and I don't know. It's just crazy, but um,
Well, so we actually looked at, I think it's or whatever the company is that does tooling you. They've got a different name. They have a
oh, it's
certifying manufacturing associates now, and so
SME, yes.
yeah, looking at what that was. But none of the manufacturers in our area had ever even heard of it. So how can you value something you've never heard of? And
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
that's why I'm like, that's another challenge with the credentials, especially for incumbent workers. If the employers are paying to send them, they don't even know what it is. Why would I care? Why would I pay? Like,
Right.
yeah.
Well, I mean, and to be perfectly honest, I'd love to hear your guys' feedback. I mean, for us, it's like, this wild, wild west is also somewhat of a benefit because we can just package a bunch of stuff together, print up a certificate, and boom, off we go. And so, but we'll see where that all
Yeah.
lands.
Is an industry recognized credential something that just the industries in your area recognize as a credential?
Right. Yeah. And just because, it's issued by the college, it's legit.
Yeah, we currently see them as an added component to a student's portfolio in addition to our credential. People recognize our credential. Our certificate holds water. But if they're a student going with two credentials, they'll get the one that has the micro credential. But it really helps in funding. I mean, because every funding source, every grant, they're just looking for that, third-party credential. And I've had these conversations with folks at DC and said, well, you guys don't really know how the wild, wild west is, as you're saying, it's not as recognized as you think, but you're just, want that stamp on that grant. And so whatever, we'll do that. And it helps with the funding. And maybe over time, I think over time it'll be beneficial. But in our region, it just hasn't taken off like other regions. Across the pond, it's taken off. And,
Right.
customers see that. So if our folks travel outside the Michigan borders, it'll be good.
Mm-hmm. Well,
But not many do.
Well, and I know we should probably get started here shortly, but it's that, because there's so much emphasis on skills as opposed to anything, putting it together as a credential that fills that void.
Mhm.
So just, maybe because it looks like we got some folks that have started to join us. Today's session is really about bridging credit and non-credit. For those that have been listening to this conversation, it would be curious to see, maybe as we could start here, is that, what are you doing about credentialing or micro-credentialing and then transferring over or allowing for academic credit?
Patrick and Lori are doing lots. Tanisha, would you please join us in the conversation if you can? If you want to share your audio and video, we'd love to hear what's going on at Wayne. So if you're willing to do that, that would be really great. Awesome. Thank you. David, love to have you join us too. You kind of knew I was going to ask.
You're good at calling people out, Amy.
I just like lots of people at the party. I really do. Party of one is usually not as much fun. That's just sad. Then you're just drinking alone.
Oh, we could go so many places with that.
Yeah. Hello. Even playing. Hey, we hear you. Can you hear us, Tanisha? Oh, now she froze. Bummer. Try again. Erica, you going to join us up in the conversation? There you are. I see you moving again, Tanisha.
Is something wrong with my, let me log in and log back out.
Okay. Give that a try. And I know David will join us as soon as he's off the phone or done eating his lunch. Yeah, that could be it too. It's an early lunch. Some days you need an early lunch. So interestingly, Ed, we actually, in the credentialing and micro credentialing conversation, Patrick and Lori were sharing a lot about how, because of that, they're doing a lot of things with credit and non-credit together. And they've done a lot of combining of those just to create some of those. I'll use the buzzword synergies. They're doing synergies. Everybody loves saying that right. It's going to be on that list of don't use this word ever again pretty soon, isn't it? And so I think they've got a lot going on there. Ed, are you doing much at NMC?
So we are. So we created a set of micro-credentials. And those micro-credentials are really based around technical competencies like everybody else. But we have defined a micro-credential as a set of basically academic classes. And that's how we bridge it. So for example, we have an electronics micro-credentials, which encompasses our 2 electronic classes. So the difference for us, though, is that we allow individuals to enter those academic through our basically non-credit portal. So they register through our Lumen system, boom, they come in, they pay, and they're in the class, and they're in the same class as students. And so that's that bridge that how we've kind of bridged it. And it seems to work well. I mean, we had to have some conversations with faculty about how to make this work. We had conversations with our registrar's office because in a sense, what we're going to do is, so let's say, Patrick, you take our 2 electronics classes and then you decide you want to pursue an associate's degree. Well, then we will pull those in and give you credit for those 2 electronics. So it's our, our on-ramp, which is a buzzword for this now. So that's what we've done with those.
How much credit are you given for that, by the way?
So let's say, for example, like the electronics classes, they're each a 3-credit class. So if you complete the, electronics micro-credential, we issue you a certificate, you can then roll up 6 credits for the class. Because in a sense, you're completing our academic class.
Is that on request as needed, or do you automatically do that for anybody that registers?
It's on request. So, we have the conversation with them. So like, again, I'll pick on Patrick. So if he registers for the class, takes a micro-credential, he's happy, we don't hear from him again, nothing happens. But a year later, if he decides he wants to get an associate's degree or his employer does, then we will go through that internal process to transfer them over. So,
and then is the pricing the same as like a credit class, or is it a different model?
It's higher.
Okay. Yeah, because they're not going through the whole registration application and that. So,
well, and so here is our thought on that. So the thing is that they're generally about 20% higher than what our cost would be for our out-of-district tuition. And the thinking is really, I mean, it's simplifying the process. Most employers are paying for this, so it's not overly price sensitive. And realistically, if you're in district, you want to pay at a lower price, then go through the academic process, and we'll help you get there. But for the most part, it's worked well. The other thing, just many of our programs, especially our special programs like the unmanned systems and the marine technology program, it's a national market. And so we have people from basically all over coming in to those programs, either online or traveling here. And so it's a little different bird. That's how we priced it.
And
So
one
these
more
are not
question.
short classes.
Oh.
No,
Sorry.
these are pure. And again, they typically follow the academic schedule. So for example, like I'll go back to my electronics, we have a section that's generally offered in the evening. And so that makes sense for those that are, currently in the workforce. So they'll come in and take those classes there. Several of our classes, in the data management side and are online. And so they'll either join live stream, or if it's a, true online class, they'll join that way. So it's a whole blended mix of things.
And my other question was about, are there prerequisites? So that's one thing that we were running into is we weren't able, if they wanted the credit, then they had to go back and go through those prereqs. Do you require any of those?
So generally we have a conversation with people, so if you come into electronic class, there's some math requirements that are needed. We want to make sure that they have that. So we do have a conversation, which puts a little more burden on me or us as part of the registration system. But the numbers aren't huge. What we're finding is this is a really good way to augment some of the lower enrollment on some of these technical, highly specialized programs. So we'll have, I think the most is 4 to 6 people that will come into it. So it's pretty easy to have those conversations. On the super specialized programs like data management, most of these are professionals that have been in the field forever, so the prereqs are not a requirement. They either have bachelor's or master's degrees, and they're just wanting that technical skill set.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can't hear you, Erica.
Is that for the credit course that you're talking about, the prereqs?
Well, so we're offering basically credit courses as non-credit. That's our bridge. And so,
okay.
If they have a prereq, we have that conversation with them.
Okay. Yeah, because it seems like if they've already had if they skip over the prereq,
They won't be. They won't be successful.
Well, or you won't. Why would you need to take the prereq unless it's a program requirement if you actually already have credit for the course?
Correct.
Okay.
So is anybody so you've really just taking credit courses and you kind of delivering them in a non-credit schedule, kind of, right?
Correct.
But has anybody done, so one of the things about the microcredits that I'm wondering is if anybody has done that, where and how that works, because a lot of the stuff we do is way less. Like we do an 8-hour electrical safety, and then we got a 32-hour basic electrical, and those are both really, really popular. And a lot of employers send we have done so many electrical safeties this year. It is the year of electrical safety. Nobody's licking anything around anymore. But it stops there. They can go further in our mechatronics and get more comprehensive in their knowledge, but that is not even close to even one of our electrical classes. And I'm challenged with filling what the employers are telling us they want as far as flexibility, time spent, targeted skills, and matching what the credit area is doing. Because then why wouldn't they just go over and take it in the credit area? I feel like it's duplication of effort. So I don't really know how to connect that or build it.
Honestly, I quit trying and just gave up and just said it's skills. That people are looking just for skills, and that's where we'll stop. We have this micro-credential thing hanging out there that if you want that, you can get that, but it's mostly skill-based, and that seems to be okay.
I'm shocked that employers are paying a premium, though, to do it as a non-credit. Like that just kind of blows me away a little bit.
Ed, do you when you conduct these courses, do they correlate directly class to class, or is it a general credit they receive, or do you do both? Some it can be counted as general credits, or it's counted as specifically it's this course is replacing this course in your curriculum.
It's course to course in the curriculum. So back to my electronics example, if you complete that micro credential, you've completed the 2 electronics classes that will apply directly to those technical courses required for our engineering tech degree, for example. So, but that's only the micro credential, and again, that's purely how we defined it. I don't, we started this conversation. It's the wild, wild west out there. We just decided to call micro credentials internally. So for communication, it's a bundling of existing academic courses. Everything else is a certificate. And so it helped clarify things internally, probably more than anything.
That is one way to get faculty on board. Just use their stuff.
Well,
That would smooth that right over, wouldn't it? Yeah.
So far, it's working.
Well, to your point, Amy, that's why our goal is to now develop all of our curriculum or make any curriculum updates in the module format. We have, like, for example, our mechatronics program is completely developed in that way. So that way, when industry partners come to us and they want this little piece of mechatronics, this little piece of electrical, this little piece of machining, this little piece of welding, that we can take those and hopefully have them in a modularized format. And then if they ever do want to, as Ed was referencing, come and get credit for that, then we can give them specific bits of credit and then use the open lab concept to fill in the learning outcomes they have missed, because we don't give general credit for experiential learning. We give specific course-to-course equivalencies. And so that's our goal, is to develop those, because most of our industry partners come, and as you referenced, they don't want 16 weeks of electrical. They want 2 weeks of electrical on this specific component or machine control. They want 2 weeks on welding in this particular type of welding in such a manner. So that's our goal, is to modularize everything so that as employers pick and choose what they want, we can eventually translate those to credit. Now, here's my question. We have some employers that prefer that their students do not get credit because they come, they pay for an associate's degree, and then that person leaves their company. Do you guys ever have any concerns of that nature when you're offering this nice bridge for students, but yet your employer, your industry partners are not on board with that?
Yeah. I think that ties back, Patrick, to our conversation about how do you do mind control on employers to be better to their employees. I don't know if that's exactly how we coined it, but I feel like it's in that realm. Right? That's a philosophical and a how to treat humans better kind of topic, because if they are purposely stunting the growth, I can't read it. Be a nice person. Is that what it says?
It says be a nice human.
Yeah. If they are purposely stunting the growth of their employees because they think that will allow them to retain them, that's bad.
It's been more of a, I would say, historical practice that a lot of times they would pay for students to get a credential and then they leave the company after the company is paid. So it isn't, I would say, necessarily not being a good human or not a good human, but history has definitely taught us that many of these students, they get their credentials from their employer and then they look elsewhere and move on down the road. So it isn't necessarily, I would think if they had some kind of a agreement with their employee that they're going to work for some period of time, that it'd probably be a better concept. But then once again, it's that idea of, are you restricting someone's growth because you paid for their degree and they went to work for your neighbor? That's the struggle that we've had historically.
Well, then you got your internal practices. Do you have growth opportunities? Well, I'm going to stop. Somebody else should probably start talking, because I think I would spiral on this.
My personal spin to this. I mean, generally, I believe if an employee is going to leave a company, he's probably going to leave for other reasons than just that. I mean, if a company treats them like that, it's probably not their best place anyway. I mean, that's the upside right now. If you're looking for a job, is you can find a job or you can move jobs, and the people that are keeping them are those that treat their employees well. So hopefully that practice will continue way beyond where, we get past this gap.
For the record, we're moving on as if that's not a thing. As you guys, the mind control, I think what you might say.
I hope that works out for you.
So,
Hey, Renee, didn't you just say you just moved? You got absorbed, for a lack of a better term, by the credit area? How's that?
I'm just sitting on the academic side still. And now I'm going to be even moved, like physically moved even deeper within the confines. So, yeah.
I love that you're calling it confines or confines, because, yeah, that's the way it feels sometimes.
It does.
Are you having any bridging of your content?
Oh, sorry, I had someone come in.
That's okay.
We are just now looking at all the competency based and trying to figure out how this all happens. And our faculty is resistant to accepting anything coming out of workforce. They do the military, they do all of that stuff, but very resistant right now. So we're just, we're going to be working with our water tech and then doing some modulized out of my department into that. So we'll see how that goes.
So I know both you and, so you've got Laura, because you're at Bay, right, Renee? And Jim from Comm, they were on our president's panel in February, and they were both huge advocates. Like, if I could just bottle what Jim was saying and spread that around, oh, that was good stuff. But I know they're both incredibly supportive of, work together. Don't be stupid. Just do it. Get rid of the ego, get rid of whatever sun you think revolves around you or whatever it is, and make it happen. And we actually had our internal PD day a while back. There was a gal, and I wish I could remember her name. She's at a community college in Florida, and she had kind of the same approach, and she's finding some success. That was basically just get over yourself. You still have things to learn, and there are people that can teach you things, and collaboration is a good thing, and it's worked really well. I know that there are, I'll just generally say, other colleges that don't have that approach as far as recognizing some of the expertise that can live in the non-credit area of the colleges. And I think it depends on their backgrounds and where they come from, and also their leadership styles. I know factors into it pretty significantly. And so I think that is because you can make the one-on-one inroads with faculty, right? Like, I'm kind of on a one-woman mission to make friends with as many faculty people as I can, to say, hey, we're nice. We do good things. It's not competition. We're all on the same team. It's good. But there's a lot of people to do that with. And so, Erica, I'm wondering if you have any insight on, at that higher executive level, if you've observed or seen any best practices or any ideas on how to influence some of that recognition, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for asking. Part of the reason I joined this session was I agree with the challenges that you're facing. And I think this is a longstanding issue in community colleges that we have been unable to resolve in any meaningful way. And we see the same thing in those transitions between K-12 and community colleges, and then community colleges and universities. It's those transition points that are really sticky, whatever the transition points are. I will say the project that we presented on in the last session, and I was interested to hear Ed talk about some of their programs, is to use, and this is just a very small thing, but to use the industry credential to negotiate that awarding of credit, because many of you are preparing your students for industry credentials. And we find that the credit to non-credit issue is so challenging, but in some respects, could we reduce some of that challenge by using the industry credential as that transfer piece from the non-credit to the credit side? This is something that the TAC grant colleges, of which many of you were part of that, was a strategy that they used towards the end to transfer the credit for those programs between institutions. And so that's one strategy I think that we are thinking about using, because in my experience with all of these types of things, you have to take really strategic, smaller bites of some of this work. And I think part of that as well, the second piece I would say is there are some pretty significant equity considerations here when students at the same institution and as Ed described, maybe even the same learning outcomes for the course are being treated differently depending on how they enter your institution through non-credit or through the credit side. And that has been I don't know if I would say effective. That's not what I'm trying to say. But if you look at it through an equity lens, it becomes quite clear who you're leaving out of this conversation when you are not awarding credit for the same competencies that are coming from non-credit. So, and that really speaks to faculty, I think. And we would feel the same way about credit for prior learning as well. When it's individualized, that individualization of earning those credits needs to be, the policies and practices need to come through an equity lens, or there tends to be unintentional bias built into that process. I don't think many people mean to do that, but without a policy around that or a very clear process about the alignment of that, I think colleges can start to run into some really significant equity considerations.
All right, so you don't have a magic potion. Fine, Erica.
No, I mean, I think it's, I guess I would just say, we've been doing this stuff with the universities for a long time, and those are just some of the talking points we use. And it has taken years, but I will say it has made a tremendous difference in our relationship. When we focus on those learning outcomes and focus on equitable practices for all students.
Mm-hmm. So one of the other kind of related to this realm that I think I'm having some challenges with as well is kind of what you're talking about, but it's also perspectives a little bit. So in our area of the college, I think we take a really customer focused view. And what I'm experiencing is a lot of credit areas take a college focused view. And it's a fundamental difference that we're having some real challenges with. And I think it speaks to this bridge between credit and non-credit, because in our area, it's listening to the client, listening to the customer, finding out exactly what they need, making sure there's some guidance and some needs analysis, and because sometimes they think they know what they need, but they actually don't after you have a conversation, do a little root cause analysis and go a little deeper. But still, it should really be focused on creating the best learning experience for them and both the client as a business and as an individual participant. And what I find is a real challenge, and I'm getting a lot of pushback in a lot of areas that no, this is the way you've got to do it, because this is the way we do it, or this is the way we think it's best to do because we're the college and we know best. I'm really challenged by that. And I don't know, Patrick, if you got anything you would like to say out loud about that, or
out loud and recorded.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. We just make sure we understand this,
Yes.
the dynamics. I like a lot of what Erica said, and I'll just echo some of the things at a programmatic level that Ed said. At a high level, our approach has been so far is to stay focused in the mission, right? So the mission of the college, or most community colleges in general, are to provide post-secondary education to anybody who wants it. So there's that equity, kind of statement right off the bat. And when we see significant differences, right? Like in our programs, we have 80 to 90% of students of color coming from, social and economic, struggling communities on a regular basis. And on the credit side, you don't. We see a significant, it's flipped around the other way. And then you say, well, we're not going to give them credit when you're producing the same type of outcomes. Then there's the equity conversation right off the bat. We've created a entry, we've reduced them barriers for entry, right? There's all these barriers for entries in entering into higher ed, and on the workforce development side, we've removed most of those. And so you create this conversation, like, Erica's saying about, okay, what's the mission here? And staying at that high level, you're going to get probably 60, 80% of the faculty acknowledging that, right? There's still going to be the outliers that could care less, and they're just focusing on the with them, right? What's in it for me and that type of thing. But you're going to focus in on the ones that really need to hear it and remember, okay, this is why I'm doing this, right? I'm teaching for a reason, especially at a community college. But on a programmatic level, when you take it down from there, you say, okay, how's this actually going to work? And I like what Ed said earlier about, focusing in on some credentials. We do that too. If there's a credential that both classes end up receiving, then that's, accepted. We have some direct articulation as well. We have a 40-hour non-credit that applies to a 3-credit class, which is very different, right? But because the outcomes were the same and the knowledge base was the same and industry recognized it, the faculty came in and said, okay, we're going to do that. We have another one that only does 2 credits instead of 3. It's a 3-credit course, but it's a 40-hour course, and they only recognize 2 out of that because there's some additional theory-based things that they taught that we agreed, hey, you know what, we don't cover those things. Whether we agree they should be there or not, industry says we don't need them, so we don't have them. And so there's some of those where but I would say it's a painstaking, continuous effort to try to make these headroads. And I think it's more than just faculty. I think it's something that has to be driven to staff and ADs and deans that are not associated with it. That's why on a regular basis, I'm communicating about workforce and continuing ed at a larger scale, across all of our departments, because anytime I get up and speak, I talk about all of us, right? And I talk about our mission and why we're connected to the college versus, they're just a cash cow. They charge $10,000 for their 14-week thing, and it only costs us $3,000 to go through an entire 2-year course. So it's this mindset that, well, you don't really understand what we're doing. Those students are paying for a customized training module that we have to they live here in our facility, and so do the faculty. And then, by the way, they're getting jobs paying, as much or more than some folks getting an associate's degree. And we're changing their life. So we bring those students back in, and they converse about how their life was changed. I mean, if you're going from an impoverished situation to $75,000 a year salary job with benefits, your life changed. Mm-hmm. And so we bring them back and we talk about that high level. And by the way, almost every one of those students that come back are students of color. So they're the exact folks that we're trying to make an in route across engineering and advanced tech, across all STEM fields, across the entire nation. And we're doing it. And then you have the faculty going, well, we don't want to articulate. Well, why not? Let's talk about that equity gap. Let's talk about why this is an issue for you. And let's dive into the, Amy, you always like to talk about the psychoanalysis piece. Why is this really an issue? And usually it's protectionism. They see us as another piece, that competitive component. And we all would agree higher education has moved into a new level of competition than ever in its history, right? Through a variety of reasons. That's a whole other meeting. But they see that WCE as that competitive opponent. So we have to lay those things down and see our public institution as a human being, if you will, a meta-human, if you will, that, you know, the WCE is just as an arm that we're working together to accomplish the same goal. I think that's where it starts, but it's not easy, and it's long, and relationships and blah. I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's worth it in the end, I think, once we get there.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Kristen, how do you feel like credit and non-credit do at OCC?
We're working on it like everyone else. I think the first non-credit program that's getting credit right now is the pre-apprenticeship, and that kind of started on the credit side. So that's where that was a priority. We're working on it a little bit. When we started our PLC and robotics technician program, you know, we were working with industry and instructors. We have a third-party vendor, and our credit side didn't have as much time to focus on helping us with that curriculum. You know, we always at least ask at first, but a lot of times there's not time for that. So we keep going back to that. It's been a very successful program. Why can't our students get credit? And we just evaluated all the courses, the competency and such, and we're missing the mark on some of the areas because it is 14 weeks, not they say, well, if you add this and add this and add that, and we can't. It's already a long program. It's already hitting an expensive price tag for Michigan Works to pay for out of grants. So I see where if we could offer maybe not full credit, but maybe partial credit, that would be helpful. And then in our healthcare programs, we're really putting a lot of time and effort into that. We started a sterile processing technician program last year, and the faculty did help with that one from the beginning to try to identify what exams to take and such. And so they actually suggested, well, because a lot of our students are now wanting to go into the surgical tech program from this. So it's helping them. So now they're like, well, what if we gave your students some credit? And we're like, oh, really? Okay. So that one is already going to get bumped to the, top, but there is a committee that's working on this, and it's definitely in the forefront right now. It's just making it happen. We've been hitting a lot of roadblocks.
I find that whenever we try to engage in conversations about that, any kind of articulation or alignment, and it's certainly not 100% across the board, but quite a bit. It's almost like they're trying to take our square peg and shaving off the corners to make it like their round hole or their round peg. No, you can't possibly be doing it right. You need to do it like we do it. And that's the good way. That's why I go psychoanalysis so much, Patrick, is because, that's how I got to do, have those conversations and build those relationships in a collaborative way and help people feel that it's a collaboration and that we're not taking something from them. Because I think you're right. I think a lot of it is protectionism and the feeling that it's competition and somehow going to take away from their programs because a lot of credit area programs are struggling with enrollment. And rather than look at a macro view of all the competition that education is receiving right now, the easiest for them is to look at their own backyard and, well, it must be you because you're right there. You must be the ones taking it from us somehow. Mm-hmm. And that's, I guess that's part of the challenge. Erica?
Amy, we found I know exactly what you mean. And I can translate one experience we had from working with the universities. Most of what you're offering are entry-level courses in some respects. Mm-hmm. And one of the strategies we used with the university faculty who, are sort of loathed to teach another section of intro abnormal psychology is we said, we'll go ahead and teach that. And then they'll be ready for upper division courses in your program, which tends to be the courses that both university faculty in the case of transfer and credit to non-credit to credit those faculty want to teach is not another section of the intro course, but what a spectacular pipeline to get some of those students who are hard to retain, clearly, from the intro course into the more advanced program level courses. But that was an effective strategy in communicating with university faculty about this, because they said, "Oh, that's right. Now I don't need to teach another section of abnormal. I can teach some more advanced topics that they want to teach anyway." So that I think can be, and it's not true in every discipline. That's the other thing that we learned is what works. The business faculty were all on board with things. They get the business model that we're talking about. Some humanities faculty, less so. So I think it kind of depends on the department or program area.
Yeah, I think humanities sometimes feels a little like the underappreciated subject, where they recognize the value, and I recognize the value of what they do too. That's how you make the people that should have Patrick's mug. But so I think it's almost a little bit of a, not exactly, but kind of a victim mindset, where they're having to always prove their worth and talk about, yes, we deserve to be a part of this, and yes, it's valuable, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I see your point. Good one. You guys all have such great advice. Yeah. All right, Ed, what else you want to talk about? We've only got a couple more minutes before we get a little lunch break.
So maybe the one thing, you asked a question about the, academic side of things and non-credit, speaking different languages. I'll use that. One of the things that I've come across recently is our foundation and our marketing people want access to a lot of the information that we're collecting and registering students. So I want to see how people feel about that. And they're asking me to collect more information, which I'm saying no to, because basically, people that I'm involved with only want name, email, and credit card. That's all I want. But they want a whole bunch of other demographic stuff and that they use for marketing. So I thought, other people experiencing similar issues, and/or how are you managing that?
Is that duck and weave? Is that what that is? Yeah, kind of do that. Same thing. I've had a request for that, and nope. We've actually had some requests because sometimes we work with high school populations, and no. That is not why they are engaging with us, is to be another advertising target for you. And
or
so,
be marketed.
Yeah. And I get why they want to do it, because again, enrollments are a thing. But there's also some privacy and the client focused approach of protecting that just a little bit. So having to balance that is tricky. I don't know if anybody else does something different. Hopefully my marketing department won't watch the recording.
Wow. Yeah. And I didn't mean to go the tangential conversation, but that was last week's fight. And so
yeah.
I had a question about maybe about pricing, because, for example, in our police academy, for many of our students, it's much more inexpensive to come through the non-credit side to take the police academy. And so our overwhelming majority of graduates go through the non-credit side versus the credit side, based just solely on pricing. Ed, you referenced earlier that your credit side's actually a little less expensive than the non-credit side. And we tend to find, as a general rule, it's the opposite. And I was just wondering if people could add their thoughts about that as we try to make this more of a bridge. But obviously, then why wouldn't our students, if it's cheaper to go the non-credit side, why wouldn't they take all classes non-credit and then convert them to credit and just cut us out of the loop? It would just seem to make mathematical sense. And I just wondered if anybody could add their thoughts or what their experience is on that.
Well, again, like I said, we kind of flipped that model, and it did help bridge between the two, because, our academic side, they feel like if they can pay more money and they're bringing people in, that's fine. And if they want to come in through the academic side and pay less, if they're in district, then they do it. And so it's working right now. what I have found when we do the pricing is that most employers and or funding sources, $1,500 to $2,000 for a class is not unreasonable, because when you think about if pre-pandemic you went to conferences or other stuff, that's where a lot of these things land. And so that nobody's really balked at the pricing yet. To me, that's like the only thing I haven't heard from, which surprised me, but makes me think I'm undervaluing it. I should have raised the prices even more.
David, we similar to Ed, we on the workforce development side in my department, Lori, if you want to chime in, but it's much higher in our area, but you're paying for customization and accelerated. So those two items you're going to pay for in pretty much any environment. You want something accelerated or customized to you, you're going to pay extra for that. Buy something customized on your vehicle, you're going to pay extra for that. And that kind of same formula is set up for us in our department. So and we're a little bit beyond that 20% mark for sure, depending on the exact one you're looking at. But it's a lot higher than what you would typically find on the credit side.
All right, friends, we're there. The last thing I would share about this topic is one of the things I've been really cognizant to try to do is in my language. I know that seems weird because I seem pretty free with just saying whatever, but I try to refer to it as the credit area and the non-credit area, because I find side as being oppositional language, and maybe, kind of naturally, subliminally, psychoanalysis again, against each other because they're sides, they're oppositional. So I would encourage maybe sometimes the terms and the words that we use can make a difference as well, and maybe try to use that or a different term when you're talking about the different areas of the college. Business unit also applies, but that not everybody really understands business unit, and it's a little bit longer. So I would just encourage maybe that. And I appreciate, again, all of the conversation. This is our last roundtable. We get to have some scarf down a little lunch now while we're looking at emails and checking on our teams and making sure nothing's on fire. And I will see y'all back, hopefully, about 12:30 with some presidents and Mike Hansen in tow. Bye, everybody.
Great. Thanks.
Good job, Ed.
Well,
That was
you did
awesome. Thank you.
Well, it was good. You did most of the talking, Amy, so great.
She's good at talking. We've all
She
learned
is
that.
good.
So we just let her do it.
Perfect.
I think I told you when we first met, Ed, it's hard to shut me up.
You did. And that's okay. It was good. I think there was good conversation. Like I said, I was only at one of these, so I don't really know how the other ones went. So it's hard to judge, but it seemed like it was good.
Kind of like that. We just start talking.
Mm-hmm. Same general audience, which is always good.
Today was a little lower. Yesterday we had larger audiences. So today either people had I know, Kristen, you had some conflicts.
Yes.
And so, I personally think that people in workforce and things like that, to be able to devote 2 full mornings to something would be a challenge.
When everyone is so busy right now, that's all I hear. I know everybody's usually busy, but I feel like now more than ever with going pro too right now. I got 3 emails this morning. I need this by the end of the day. So.
I got proposal templates up on my other screens.
Yes.
And yep. So I'm going to go back and write a couple more proposals and try to do some stuff before that. But thank you. I really appreciate your contributions and volunteering to be a part.
Well, sure. And good luck with your future endeavors.
Thank you.
And everything. And let me know if there's a gap at MACET I can help fill. I'll be glad to do something.
We would love that. I was going to reach out to you. I know that you've been very helpful recently. So we would love to get you involved with the executive team. So I will be in touch for sure.
Perfect. Be glad to, Kristen. So thanks.
Great. Thank you.
All right. See everybody.
All right. Thank you.